Why bother with empty shelves at retail stores, waiting 3 days for a break to fill, or driving across town to find out your hobby shop closed at 4 when you always have a card show in your pocket? With Loop, you can instantly buy cards, packs, boxes, or into auctions with the click of a button, and do it all while chatting with some of the best personalities and the best community in the hobby. Download the Loop app now on iOS or Android. Loop, a card show in your pocket.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Fish Stripes Live, presented by Loop. That's L-O-U-P-E. We have a smaller panel here today compared to the last stream. We have Noah Berger, Eli Sussman, Alex Carver, and from CBS Sports and fantasy expert, Miami's own Chris Towers. Everyone, how's it going? How's everyone doing tonight?
Doing fantastic. Well rested
hanging
and revitalized.
Kevin's not here, and we have Isaac Zoot, who is covering the game today between the Braves and the Marlins.
Oh, I think real quick, Daniel, I should show why Kevin is unavailable.
Kevin is on a mission.
He's preoccupied with
painful.
other
painful
hobbies.
To watch.
This is from
fans
earlier,
of golf. Look away.
From just a few minutes ago. He sent this to us.
Teeing up, getting ready.
He kicked the knocks off the tee.
Why is he at Topgolf using a wedge? What?
Kevin Woods.
Oh, that's not good.
The fact he even made contact.
Why is he staring at it
hand.
so like?
I'll play it one more time.
Like the Rock.
I mean, look, I will say, like, I don't really golf, but I'm a lot better with the pitching wedge than I am with any other club. And so when I'm like done feeling bad about myself at Topgolf, I will switch to the pitching wedge and just like, because that's the only one I can hit straight. I can hit it like 45 yards straight as an arrow. Everything else, I'm horrible. But the pitching wedge, like, you get me just outside of the green, and I actually look like a decent golfer. So I can sympathize with that, and it makes me wonder how bad the other shots must have been.
Yeah, I guess
that was the one he decided to record and send to us.
That was probably the best one. That was the best one.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Chris, if you're not aware, he's still in high school. He's got room to grow and refine his skills and mature. So, not going to be too critical on him.
I don't know.
For one bad performance, we got to talk about another one that happened this weekend. Even though the Marlins did play good, they did win 2 out of 3 of the Washington Nationals. I want to focus on Pablo Lopez and what happened to him in that last game against the Nationals. Was not great at all. It's probably the worst start of the season. 3 innings, 4 hits, 3 earned runs, 3 walks, 82 pitches. Lasted a really short start, especially against a Nationals lineup that's not been one of the best in baseball, probably one of the worst. Just what are your guys' thoughts about Pablo Lopez? And is this any concern at all from Pablo, especially going up against the Nationals and having an outing like that?
Well, right before we get into that, I think it makes sense. Chris is obviously first time on the stream this season. Want to give him an opportunity, 37 games in, to just talk about how this Marlins team is compared to your expectations. I mean, Pablo is obviously one guy who I assume has exceeded expectations you could have reasonably had. But for someone that has followed the team for a long time and dealt with a lot of bad teams, they put a lot of effort this offseason to move into the right direction. How does it all compare to what you were expecting?
It's about what I expected. Like, the shape of it is slightly different. I didn't think they would have 3 starting pitchers with an ERA over 4 at this point in the season, especially when you consider, league ERA is under 4 right now. So I did think they would be better in terms of the pitching side. But then, like, you look at the lineup and you see one guy having a great season, Jess Chisholm. I had my questions about him, but there's no question he was always capable of this kind of stretch. And then a whole lot of pretty mediocre production. And that's what I thought. Like, this was a team that, like, adding obviously Al Garcia and Jorge Soler, that hasn't helped so far. But even with those guys hitting, I still thought this would be a pretty run-of-the-mill offense in the best-case scenario. And so the fact that they're 17-20 and they're getting very little from Soler and Garcia, I guess you can look at that and say that there are reasons to be positive. Trevor Rogers, I would assume, is going to be better than a 4.54 or 4.45 ERA moving forward. But on the whole, I think it's probably a 500 team. And so they've played more or less like a 500 team. I don't know. I guess they're living up to my expectations, even though it's taken a slightly different path than I thought. And I guess it's worth saying I'm probably not giving them enough credit. Their Pythagorean win-loss record is 21-16. They've scored 19 more runs than they've allowed so far. So the fact that they've blown so many ninth-inning leads, in particular, I guess they're probably better than their record, but not. I expect them to be around 500 more or less.
The Mets record scares me.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the right question to ask, but are they in contention? Would you see them at all as a wild card team, or is that just maybe a little too much for this Marlins team this season?
I think they can definitely contend for it. Like you look at the Pythagorean record, like I said, 21-16. That puts you probably at like an 87 win pace, I would guess, off the top of my head, maybe a little better. And so, yeah, like that'll absolutely get you in the playoffs, in this expanded playoffs world that we live in. And really, like, you look at the pitching and really it's like the first inning and the ninth inning have just been awful. The ninth inning, they've got a 5.59 ERA. First inning, they've got a 4.86. Outside of those two innings, their pitching's been awesome. It's just the problem is you put yourselves in holes in the first inning and you blow winnable games in the ninth inning. The bullpen actually hasn't been terrible overall. They've just been absurdly ill-timed in their terribleness. And so, there are reasons to believe that this team can be better, but I think ultimately, like, the offense is just, it's not enough, and I don't know where they come up with, help, I guess would be the word. They've got some guys at AAA who are hitting well. Maybe, JJ Bleday can start to figure it out, or, Gerard Encarnacion, who I know we're going to talk about in a little while, but I think they're probably an expanded playoffs contender, but, pretty far from being one of the better teams in the league still.
Yeah. And the way the NL East has been this season, we're looking at it now, 4 teams under 500, the Mets are seemingly just running away with it. Yeah. Would it be fair to say that this Marlins team is the second best team in the NL East, or the Braves maybe come back from the little rut they're going through, or the Phillies finally show the potential that they have with that lineup?
That'd probably be the best case scenario to be the second place team. Obviously, this weekend is going to give us a little bit of clarity about that. We thought for most of the year last year, the Braves seemed like a middling team, and then they just struck gold on the trade deadline moves they made, and all of a sudden, all their pitchers got fired towards the end of the season. So you never really totally know, even when you get deep into the year, like that. With the Phillies, for whatever reason, we know that in the past few years, when they do play head to head, the Marlins, like every single year, do better than we think in those matchups. And so we'll see how that plays out coming up. Finally, they get to play the Phillies again in a few weeks. Thank goodness. I always relish those opportunities. But so much of it is complicated because I'm still scarred from last year, where, as Chris mentioned, about underperforming your run differential and losing all those close games. It happened last year, and it didn't even out as things went on. It reached a point where they got so deep into the year and too deep of a hole that they made the decision to sell off some of their veterans and not even make it possible for them to come back later in the year. This year, we feel like the team is going to be more determined to compete, in that if they go deep enough into the year and they're still a handful of games below 500, that they'll make moves either internally or whatever they can do externally to make a difference. And I guess that mindset would have to be the key difference. I think the talent level is a little bit better, of course, but ultimately a lot of it's going to depend on the front office. We've spent so much time already this year, it's too early to talk trades, but talking about how just the front office and Kim Eng deserves some responsibility for this. Just they don't seem to put the optimal active roster together at the same time. The timing of calling up certain young players versus journeyman veterans, and the playing time that these players get while they're on the roster, it's been frustrating to see them, like, those little incremental differences sometimes cost them in these really close games.
Well, they're not a team, like the way this team is currently built. They're not a team with a lot of room for things to go wrong. Like that's just a team like the Braves, I think, has a higher baseline talent level than the Marlins, and like they've had a lot of disappointing performances so far. Ozzy Albies, Marcell Ozuna, like those guys have all been underwhelming. And once those guys figure it out, like I think you look at the projected wins-loss on there from Fangraphs, I think that's from Zips or one of their projection systems, and like an 87 win projection compared to like right around 80 for the Marlins. I think that's probably right. And so the Marlins are in a spot where they can't keep blowing games. This is something that, I think back to a lot of the Marlins teams of the past, and I think back to like a 2008 era Marlins team or 2009 era teams. These teams that looked like they had a chance to compete. And it was always like kind of the lesson that the previous regime had learned from the 2003 World Series was like, when everything goes right, we can be really good. And the problem is not everything goes right. That's never how it works. Like when everything goes right, yeah, you can have a 2003 where you come out of nowhere and win a World Series. But like there's a lot of wish casting, I feel like, in the way this team is presently built, in that like you can squint and see like, man, if we lock down that ninth inning, but like this team still, I hope that they understand that this team still needs reinforcements, whether that's Max Meyer, hopefully the last couple of starts are just a bump in the road and we see him soon, or, some potentially bullpen help, although I think the bullpen's actually talented enough, or, another hitter probably. But that's kind of the state of the Marlins in my eyes right now, is that they're pretty good, but they're
not good enough.
They're not good. I mean, yeah, and I don't think that's necessarily unfair to say, but I don't want to be a pessimist. That's my natural state as a Marlins fan. I was joking the other day, like I was born in 88, and so I watched the Panthers make the Stanley Cup Finals when I was 8, and then the Marlins win the World Series when I was 9, and that set up a really, really unfair expectation for how the rest of my life as a fan of those teams would go.
Oh God.
I want to also talk a little bit on the National Series to get away a little bit from the negatives. There was a good pitching performance, a spot starting Cody Poteet, 4 2/3 inning, 1 hit, 0 earned runs. He was perfect through 3 innings. We thought we were taken out because Donnie wanted to get in some other relievers, but it turned out he had like a finger issue, nail.
Sliced his finger.
So yeah, sliced his finger. What did you see from Cody Poteet that game? Because I believe he really showed a lot, and I think he deserves another spot as a starter or a starting game for the Marlins later, in a couple games. What do you see from Cody Poteet from that game? Is that something to build on, or could he potentially take a spot in the rotation?
It's kind of the same story with every other Marlins pitcher, right? Like this hard Marlins changeup. I don't know. I don't know. Do we have a name for it? Like the Mets in the big
dot curve. I don't know.
Yeah, because in the the Matt Harvey, Jacob deGrom era for the Mets, they had the Worthen slider that they would teach everyone. Everyone was throwing these like 91 mile an hour sliders, and the Marlins, it seems like every pitcher has this like hard, firm changeup that becomes their best pitch. Pablo Lopez, his has a little more movement, but Trevor Rogers throws a hard changeup. Sandy Alcantara, obviously, he's throwing 94, 95 mile an hour changeups. And Poteet, he went from throwing a changeup 18% of the time last season to 38% of the time this season. That's become his go-to pitch. He's got a 43% whiff rate. That's incredible to throw a changeup that often and get that kind of whiff number with it. And the quality of contact metrics against are really, really good. 217 expected WOBA. So he's kind of just following the same developmental path as seemingly every pitcher in the Marlins organization. With, they just, whether they teach it well or they emphasize it, I don't know what the specific explanation is, but that seems to be the biggest explanation for Cody Petit looking, like a pretty solid pitcher right now. I've been pleasantly surprised with how he's pitched in, long relief and the way that start went. So yeah, that is one thing this organization has done very, very well, is developing pitchers.
Right. We've talked about it before, Chris, on here about him last year versus him this year. And you're right. Like, he's completely different. Me and Eli have both mentioned it. If you look at, his metrics before and after the sticky stuff ban, it was like night and day. Right. So I think he really got hurt by that, honestly. And he needed to do something. He needed another pitch because his primary breaking pitch, I think, slider, it wasn't going to be good enough without sticky stuff, So yeah, I think that really hurt him. But to see him bounce back pretty much out of nowhere, a pitch that he basically didn't have in this short of an amount of time, hasn't even pitched a lot at the major league level. So yeah, that's big. Does he have a spot in the rotation long term? No. Absolutely
ideally not. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. But yeah, good relief piece to have that can go multiple innings. When your starter doesn't have it, you can throw him in there. And that's really good. So that's his ideal role, but it's nice to see him make something out of himself after he had so many issues after that ban. So yeah, good to see Cody doing well for sure. That was a good start.
Go ahead, Noah.
On the Pablo start, which we were going to touch on earlier, but we went to something else. You're going to have a clunker. You're going to have every pitcher's going to have a clunker. His velos were down half a tick on everything. His spin rate was down half a tick on everything. It's just, you're going to have a clunker. So you're going to have a game where you're just off, and he was just off. He was something was bothering him out on the mound. I asked him after the game. He looked like he was going to his face a lot more. He said the brim of his hat was covered in sweat because he was pitching so much in one inning. It's just an off night. It's going to happen.
And he's been
not worried.
He's been prone to that from time to time. This is something that when I talk about him for fantasy, he's had, it was the 2018 season when he had like the two blow up starts, both against the Mets, I want to say. Yeah. Where he gave up like 10 runs and 8 runs or something like that. And if you took out those two starts, he had like a 3.4 ERA, and he's had like 1 or 2 starts every year. And this was that, and yeah, it happens to everyone. Like you said, like
it's what Don Mattingly said after the game. Everyone's gonna have a clunker.
Yeah, like it's
just
really
needed bats to pick it up, which they did, and then it got blown at the end.
Yeah, it turns out it's really difficult to pitch in Major League Baseball, and he was never gonna have a sub 1 ERA. He's not gonna have a sub 2 ERA the rest of the season. That's unrealistic even in this current environment. But the question for me with Pablo Lopez. He in my rankings as starting pitcher for the rest of the season, I've got him as a top 20 starting pitcher. And the only question is not, is he good? Because I think he's very clearly good, and I think he's proven that, especially over the past 2 seasons. The question, 21st. Giving him a little too much credit. He's only 21, not top 20. The only question for him is, can the shoulder hold up? He's missed significant time 2 out of the past 3 years with a shoulder injury. And he's in that, like, I was grouping him with Clayton Kershaw after they both got off to these incredible starts. But, the question coming into the season for them wasn't, are they good? The question was, are they healthy? And as we saw with Kershaw, you're healthy until you aren't. And that's the concern with Lopez, but not that he had a bad start. Like, his velocity is a little bit down this season, but his changeup's been so good, and that's such a good pitch for him in general that, losing a mile per hour off your fastball or whatever it is that he's lost this season, I don't think that's really a concern.
Yeah, and that last game between the Marlins and Nationals, that Pablo start, probably one of the craziest things happening in the 9th and 10th inning. Just what do you guys have to explain or just have you guys ever seen anything like that, especially with Jesus Sanchez, his foot on the bag, Juan Soto catches it, and then they had to review it and everything. Just what do you take from that last the ninth and 10th inning from that game, because that's something I've never even seen before.
I can't imagine being an umpire and actually wanting to end the game like that. You see it all the time where they appeal to the base and then almost always says, no, he was fine. And then they review it afterwards, because I think that was something they could have reviewed on the national side. I can't understand. There's no adrenaline. That's not something that I'd want to do as an umpire, and put yourself in that position after that agonizing long review to finally get it overturned. So I was surprised that even if they suspected that it may have been that scenario, that was the original call. And at least, ultimately they got that call right. And you're just in a situation where the team had used a whole lot of relievers earlier that game and in the previous game. And believe it or not, I think one of the keys to that game was Anthony Bass, having pitched each of the previous 2 days. He's been so good, and they didn't want to use him a third straight day, so he ends up in extras in the tie game, and he's not used. He's not used on the mounds. He's used as a pinch runner. That was a critical difference in the game. You could say maybe that's on Mattingly, that maybe Mattingly should have been open to using him a third day in a row on the mound.
He was actually he ran the bases very well. He had a good read on the ball to the outfield and was ready to come home, but he didn't have the opportunity to score because our hitters didn't do anything. On the Jesus Sanchez play, I was there. I was up in the press box. Nobody knew what was going on. We had no clue what was happening. All of a sudden, the Nationals are celebrating on the field. We're like, what is going on? I ran over to the radio booth. And Kyle was coming out, and I'm like, Kyle, what is going on? He's like, I don't know, but I think I have to go down there. So he's heading down there, not knowing what's going on. Blenton's trying to explain what he thinks is happening. JP is spitting mad at the umpire for some reason. We have no idea. And I go back into the press box, and Craig Minervini's like, I think they called Jesus Sanchez out for leaving the base early. I'm like, what? They didn't show any replays. We didn't get any good replay angle in the stadium. I saw that the Nationals broadcast had a really good replay of it. Ours did not. So we had no idea what was going on. So the whole ballpark had no clue what was going on. It was just mass confusion. It was insane. I've never seen anything like it. You always say you go to the ballpark, you'll see something you've never seen before.
And also, what did you take on? I was looking at, especially going back in that game. One thing that really stuck out to me with Anthony Bender. Is it time for him to be optioned down in AAA? Is it time for him to go down? He didn't even pitch 1/3 of an inning. Gave up 2 hits, 1 in a run, walked the batter. Just what's going wrong with Anthony Bender? Is it time to set him down?
Well, I wanted to spin this to Chris on a related topic. So Bender has most of the Marlins saves this year. Nobody else has more than one. He's been bad. We might go into that, but we've already talked about it a lot. I'm wondering, is there any other team that has a worse closer situation moving forward than the Marlins? Because their incumbent was Dylan Floro, who got hurt, and he's not looked like himself at all since coming back from that issue. Bender is the one, as I said, that's been getting most of the saves, and he looks desperately in need of some sort of total retooling. So, and you look to the minors, we've talked about this. They have guys at AA that we really like, but they don't even have a sexy closer call-up option. Are there other teams that are in this much of a pickle when it comes to figuring out who their closer is?
I mean, it's mostly just a question of, for the Marlins, do they want to switch from development to trying to get immediate help right now with someone like Max Meyer? Because I think Max Meyer is definitely someone who could come in and help the bullpen. I don't think that would be the right move.
Doesn't want to, and also he's hurt right now.
But yeah, that's one that I that could be an option. Boston has been in a similar spot. Hansel Robles leads the Red Sox with 2 saves. He's one of 5 pitchers with a save so far, 6 pitchers with a save, I think, and they're another team that Matt Barnes was the incumbent. He's been awful. I don't know if he even has a save. He has 1 save. And there are a hand. Cincinnati has. We joke a lot on the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast that Cincinnati for the last 2 seasons has basically just nobody has wanted to be the closer for the Cincinnati Reds. They've had a bunch of guys that we think are pretty interesting, and the Marlins they really. I don't know, they seem to have had a lot of confidence in Bender because they keep going back to him, even though he's blowing saves and he's, 7 saves. He's probably pretty close to the top 10. But yeah, he hasn't been good. And that's, I don't know, like I think they've got enough guys in the bullpen. I'm not actually worried about the talent that they have. I think Floro, when he's right, is good. I think Sulcer and Scott are both really useful bullpen options. And so and even Bender, like his career has been, like last season, he was pretty solid. The 10.4 K per 9, pretty good walk rate, didn't allow a lot of home runs. Like he looked good. And this is sort of the problem with relievers is he threw 60 innings. And so, that's 2 months for a starting pitcher. You don't tend to look at 2 months of a starting pitcher having a 3.2 ERA or whatever and saying, well, he's an ace now, especially if it comes out of nowhere. With relievers, because it comes over the course of a full season, we tend to maybe ascribe a little more on the sample sizes than we should. Yeah. But that also applies to the 14 innings he's thrown this season. He's probably better than this. And so I don't think the bullpen is the place where the Marlins should be going out of the organization to try to find help. I think they've got enough arms. I think they've been good enough developing pitching that they should have some faith in their internal options, but that requires somebody grabbing the 9th inning role and, running with it. Because like I said earlier, they don't have much margin for error here.
I'm willing to be crucified for this. I think I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think Anthony Bass deserves a shot at getting the 9th inning again. He's shown nothing short of being great so far this season. He's been a little shaky, but not as bad as the other guys that have tried being the closer. Give him a shot.
I mean, and even like he was awful the first 2 weeks of last season.
Yeah.
He actually had a 2.78.
It was awful when he was in the 9th inning for the first 2 weeks of last season, and then he went to the 7th inning and was fine.
Yeah, April 12th on, he allowed 8 earned runs in his first 4 appearances. April 12th on, he had a 2.78 ERA. So it's
at least you don't have to worry about Joey Wendell hitting a home run.
You see, all yeah, true. All fans will remember is those first couple weeks because it was in the biggest spot, and then of course they moved him out of the closer's role, and he's quietly good. So and now he's been really good. So I mean, honestly, on this team right now with Bender not being very good, and they've tried Scott, they've tried Sulcer. They have nobody right now to call up in AAA unless they call up somebody directly from AA, which Eli mentioned, or unless Andrew Nardi keeps producing at the AAA level, who I don't think has closer stuff, but maybe.
That's a name I've never heard before.
Yeah, he's a lefty. He's limited velo, but he has a hammer curveball. He's more middle relief. He's not a closer. Or unless they move somebody. If they, I don't think they're going to move Edward Cabrera. I don't think they're going to move Max Meyer. But yeah, who is it right now? If you want to win right now, who's your closer? And it's nobody in the organization unless you give it back to Bass and he proves he can hold it down. So
speaking of hammer curveball, Tommy Nance. This curveball is special.
In a small sample, it's been fun.
12-6 dive.
Yeah. The one thing I want to say about Bender, because it ties into our other conversation about the changeup, is that he tried to improve his changeup over the offseason. That was his emphasis. He came to spring training. People were raving about it, and he is using it a little bit more this year, but it just has not – it hasn't taken to him the same way it has many of these other Marlins pitchers for whatever reason. So it's not an 100% success rate that they have with teasing that changeup and having it make a big difference for people. If they did, then maybe that would be that a really key adjustment for him. Maybe that would lead to better results. But until for the time being, I've already mentioned this, that I think he's a pretty clear candidate, potentially as soon as on Tuesday when we think Richard Blyer is coming back from the IL. I think he's a guy that could get squeezed down to AAA just to get in the reps and figure it out. It's just been so consistently mediocre. Almost every single outing there are base runners. That's the problem, is that you never really see glimpses even of a guy that you can trust in a clean inning, that you can trust with inherited runners. Because didn't he inherit some runners just the other night when he hit that batter to put in the tying run? He didn't make that whole mess himself, but he was put into that really critical situation, and that proved to be a big mistake. So it's unfortunate because longtime listeners here know I was the first one on the hype train. I was on Bender Mania in early March after his very first spring training appearance. I saw the stuff and the way that he was using it and the way that he was commanding it back then. It was pretty awesome. It just, over time, you need to make adjustments. The league scouts you out, figures you out, and he has not made the necessary adjustments to keep being successful.
I want to mention one more name, Eli. Not a closer, but let's say they send down Bender. I think Bender should be on a short leash right now because of not only because he struggled, but because of what this guy is doing in the minors. I think he needs to be here. Jeff Brigham, you guys may not remember that name because he's been injured so damn much. But man, that guy in AAA he's a 30-year-old guy. He's been probably one of the best pitchers in the entire organization. He has like a 32.8 KBB. ERA is just above 3. He struck out like 6 guys in each of his last 2 outings. Can go multiple innings. I think that guy needs to be up. So not only has Bender struggled, but I think he should be facing some heat from that guy because he's been really good.
Yeah. And before we go to the break, I want to ask Chris one question really quick for fantasy. What Marlins reliever should people pick up? Who is the one guy that if you had to pick up from the Marlins bullpen, who would it be?
Cody Poteet is cheating.
I would say probably Floro still because I feel like if he can get right, and obviously he's looked a long way from right so far, but I think if he can get right, I think they would want him to be the closer, and I think that matters. You know, the organization's desire, like, sure, Bass, you know, they did acquire him to be the closer at the start of last season, so it's possible that they go back to him, but I would think if everyone looks like themselves, Floro is probably the guy. And so if you were speculating, and I wouldn't suggest you speculate on this, I think...
Oh, but it's fun.
I struggle with the reliever game in fantasy because so much of it, like, a lot, like...
It's very volatile.
We've spent a lot of time this season on our podcast talking about, like, a team like the Reds and their bullpen session, their bullpen struggles, and it's like, is it really ever going to matter? You know, like, unless someone is just lights out, like, unless someone just comes. And so I always struggle with it because, one, you're trying to predict not just who will be good in a small sample size, which is really tough with relievers. Reliever rankings are my least favorite part of the job. Because you're talking about guys throwing 40 to 60 innings per season, and you're trying to say, well, is this guy good or not? I don't actually know. But then it's more like a guy can be awesome, but if his team doesn't view him as the closer, it doesn't matter. And so you're trying to predict not just performance, but then the desires and wants of a team and how those two things will intersect. And so my guess is that Floro, if he looks right, will be the closer for the Marlins. But I can't say that I feel good about having Dylan Floro on my team. I certainly wouldn't have him in my lineup right now. And so if you can't have a guy in your lineup, he's pretty expendable. And so, yeah, it would be Floro, but I can't recommend him strongly.
All right. Well, we're going to be having a break, and after this break, we'll be talking more of starting the Braves Marlins series preview, lineups, and some more fantasy baseball talk.
Why bother with empty shelves at retail stores, waiting 3 days for a break to fill, or driving across town to find out your hobby shop closed at 4 when you always have a card show in your pocket? With Loop, you can instantly buy cards, packs, boxes, or into auctions with the click of a button, and do it all while chatting with some of the best personalities and the best community in the hobby. Download the Loop app now on iOS or Android. Loop, a card show in your pocket.
So right before we get this lineup ready and talking about the Braves and the Marlins, there's one prospect I want to talk about, and that's Gerard Encarnacion, who's just been killing it so far this season. Really quick, his 2022 stats and 132 at-bats, averaging 3.71, 10 home runs, 22 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, and an OPS of 1.068. I'm going to give this to Alex, our resident fish on the farm, minors prospect expert. Just what do you think of Encarnacion this season, and what is his potential? Can we see him in the show as late as September or August? Is he ready for the show?
Guys,
it's not far at all. I'll say that. It really is not far at all. The question is right there on the screen, how do you get him here? And that's the question that has to be answered because this guy's not far away. That swing right there is spectacular. I mean, the pitch was up, but the fact that he just literally with so much ease is able to hit the ball almost out of the stadium is ridiculous. Power potential is definitely 70 grade. What was holding him back was his very bad strikeout rate, which is this year, I think, down near 25%, when last year it was up near 40. So he's answered that question. He's seeing pitches better, and he's swinging the bat like this. Ridiculous. So, yeah, where does he play? Right field, first base, or DH? Honestly, I like him better the more defensively limited he is. He has a great arm in the outfield, but he doesn't run very well. He doesn't get great reads from everything that I've seen from him. First base, he's okay. But then you have a guy named Lewin Diaz who is a lot better if you're looking for defense. So everything together, I like him best as a DH. But if he has to be in the outfield, he can do it. If he has to play first base, he can do it. But we know those positions are crowded. So honestly, it's going to take injury or a trade. Honestly, this is the 12th best hitter in minor league baseball right now per WRC+. It's the second best hitter in the Miami Marlins organization by WRC+, to only Kyler Castillo, which is a name you guys may not know, but he's in single A advanced, just got promoted. So what do you do with this guy? And honestly, I said this to Peter Pratt on his show on Locked On Marlins, that I really think the best way to get value out of this player right now is to trade him because of how badly blocked he is. And it sucks to say that because he's come a long way and could be a good player, but man, I really think that's the best way to get value out of this player is to trade him because he's just so blocked by everything that the Marlins currently have.
Well, and I think the fact that he's playing so much better than he ever has before, that there's reason to believe that he might struggle to keep this up. And so there's just also the, trade the guy when he's got an 1100 OPS part of it.
Right.
But on the other hand, the Marlins aren't necessarily in the position to be trading the rare hitters who show upside in the minors. So it's kind of a tough situation where it's not exactly clear what his path forward is. But I don't know if this is a team that can afford to move a promising young hitter either. It's kind of a tough spot.
Yeah, when he started breaking out in 2019 in a lot of different ways, I saw similarities to Garrett Cooper, both the physical size, the power to all fields, and also the defensive limitations, but also, the emergency versatility that he could play right field because he has the arm for it. And he's learning first base, although the early returns haven't been that pretty. He's mostly just a bat, but there's a good reason to believe he's going to be an above average bat. So the question is, where do you play him? And also if he could stay healthy. I mean, Cooper is an extreme example of not being able to stay healthy. And when you're talking about a team like the Marlins, are they more likely to cling to Cooper another year? Or realistically, he's probably coming to the end of his role in the organization due to his age and also because his little uptick in salary. And with somebody in Encarnacion who now gives you potential 7 seasons of club control, if it's a comparable type of player, I think I see him being more so. It's going to be awkward whether they would actually trade one of the vets, whether it's Cooper or Jesus Aguilar, and call up a guy who doesn't have experience, just because it is unpredictable, especially that first year, as to whether these guys are going to make a smooth transition or whether they're going to be hurting your team.
And initially. Especially right now.
Yeah.
This is something that if you're paying attention around baseball, the top prospects that are getting called up on the hitting side have largely flopped since the 2020 season. And I wonder how much of it is just that lost year of development, how much of it is just the offensive environment in Major League Baseball and the fact that they're using different baseballs in the majors versus the minors and how much that's impacting everything. It seems like we're back to a point where we were in I don't know, the mid aughts, where I no longer just expect the top prospects to get called up and immediately hit the ground running and be difference makers, where, for a while there, it seemed like every guy was getting called up and immediately making a difference. And, overall, I think the long-term trend is still that players are better younger now than they used to be. But, it's no longer a sure thing. But look, anytime you have a conversation about playing time, I tend to go with the Jurassic Park quote, life finds a way. And the Marlins, if Encarnacion come July 1st still has an 1100 OPS after, a month and a half at AAA, I'm not so like they'll find a place for him to play if they think he's ready. I think that's the kind of thing where this lineup is not so stacked that you can't shuffle guys around and get him an opportunity. Like Soler and Garcia being in the corners /DH, that complicates things a little bit, but Cooper's not unmovable. He's not such a staple in the lineup that you can't put him out there. So I think if it looks like he has to be on the roster, there will be a place for him somewhere.
The last thing I'll say, Danny, is that if you take out or move one of Aggie or Cooper, they're not going to move both. If you move one of them, which I thought they should have done in the offseason, but of course not going to go there. Still haven't done it. Who knows if they will at the deadline? I think they definitely should, as Eli was saying. And then even if they don't, is Cooper really irreplaceable? No. But whose spot is that? And there's a guy named Lewin Diaz that will have a lot to say about that, because Lewin Diaz definitely is ahead of Urar in terms of he's played more in AAA. That's number one. Number two is he's a much more complete player in that he plays very, very good defense and provides a similar bat. Urar is ahead a little bit on the hitting side of things and being a more complete offensive guy. But Lewin's not that far away. So I think it's his spot first and then Urar after that. And do you move two guys? I highly doubt it. So how do they get him here is the question. I mean, I hope Chris is right. I hope that if he forces his way here, that they make room. But the Marlins have shown that they've gone the opposite direction of not making room for guys that are ready a lot in the past. So that's what I fear. I say trading is probably the best way right now today to get value out of him. It's to trade him. But we'll see what they do.
Yeah. And with that, we'll start with our series preview for this 3-game stretch between the Marlins and the Atlanta Braves. Where we'll be putting up the lineup right now for this matchup between Atlanta and Miami. And just what are your guys' quick thoughts? This is always a heated rivalry between these two teams. Marlins going up against the World Series champ Braves. Ronald Acuna's first game back in Marlins Park since that injury, going up against the veteran Charlie Morton and Trevor Rogers. Just what do you guys see from this matchup specifically, and how do you think the Marlins, what do they have to do to win this series?
Can we just zoom in on the batting average of the 7-hitter on the Marlins lineup? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're good now. I have no further questions.
So what do you guys
Thank you,
see
Noah.
from this? Especially Trevor, who's had such an up and down season with a lot of downs starting off. Just how does he have to do against this Braves lineup with Acuna, Albies, Matt Olson? Just what does Trevor Rogers have to do to keep doing on that path where, as an all-star pitcher like he was last year?
Yeah, his last start, hyper encouraging. The fact that he was actually missing bats with his changeup. And it was really a slider. The slider was the key to the last start, how he was bragging about how proud he was and how much work he'd put in with Mel Stoudemire Jr. to make that pitch a legitimate wipeout pitch that could actually put batters away, being able to locate it in the zone and backdoor it, but also being able to get whiffs with it. As long as he's consistent with that new slider, in addition to what he has, he's going to be pretty close to the guy that we thought was going to be a very good pitcher coming into this year. So it's not that complicated. He has the stuff. And even with just 3 pitches, I like guys having more than 3 pitches if they're going to be a consistent starter, but he can do it if his slider is going to be as good as it was last time.
Yeah, and like you said, that more sweeping slider, which is a trend we're seeing around baseball. He's shaved a couple of points of velocity off of it. He's getting a little more horizontal movement on it, and so that could be something that just gives his profile a little more differentiation. With the changeup and fastball kind of moving in the same direction. Maybe the slider gives him a little more on the horizontal plane. But I think the biggest key is the changeup, especially becoming a swing and miss pitch again, because that hasn't been the case for him. He actually only has 6 strikeouts with the changeup so far, that being the third strike. 20% whiff rate. Last season it was a 34% whiff rate. The slider taking a step forward is an encouraging sign. But the changeup is such a key for him and was such a key for when he was great last season that I do think that getting that back to the level it was in the last season, especially early on, I think that is ultimately the key. And then the slider can be more on the margins for him. But obviously if the slider can become an above average pitch for him, that only makes the profile even better. So the changeup is the thing to watch, and hopefully he's got the feel for it, because when the changeup is working for Trevor Rogers, it makes him such a dynamic pitcher.
And I want to go a little bit and talk about that Braves lineup really quick, because one thing that really stood out to me was they don't have one hitter who's hitting 270. A lot of guys have been almost backtracking a little bit so far this season. Acuna coming back from injury. Matt Olson hitting 255. Albies 233. Marcelo 218. Riley Austin. Adam Duvall less than 200. Just what have you guys seen from this Braves lineup? And is there something to worry about with Miami? Should they go into it thinking less of the Braves just because they're having a down season with averages?
I will say you can never underestimate the Braves lineup.
Yes,
you see what they can do. I'm a very big fan of looking into the matchups. So like how the Braves hitters have done against Trevor Rogers specifically, and the Marlins hitters have done against Charlie Morton specifically. Dansby Swanson hits Trevor Rogers very hard, but he's at the way bottom of the lineup. And other than that, everyone's pretty much hitting around 250 against Trevor Rogers. It's a small sample size, but it's enough to give you a feel of how he matches up against them. And the other side, the Marlins seem to hit pretty well against Charlie Morton. Miguel Rojas specifically, in 22 plate appearances, has a 318 average against Charlie Morton with the 2 RBIs, 2 extra base hits, no home runs, but he's still getting on base, getting stuff going, getting runs moving around. So I think it could be an interesting matchup this afternoon.
Yeah, it's been a really rough start for Charlie Morton. The last start in particular was his best, but before that, he had 5 straight starts with 3 or more walks. He didn't have a single stretch like that last season. I don't think he had a single stretch last year with more than 2 starts with 3+ walks. So it's been a really rough start for Charlie Morton. But like Trevor Rogers, it's mostly seemed like he's fine. Like when you look at spin rate and velocity and release point and movement and all that stuff, he mostly looks like himself. And that's mostly been true of Trevor Rogers as well. And so those are both pitchers who I think are going to pitch better moving forward. They're both coming off their best starts of the season. And I don't think you necessarily look at the fact that they both got ERAs, above 4.4 and are, I would guess probably in the bottom 15 or 20 in ERA among starting pitchers right now, given the landscape. I don't think you look at that and expect a ton of offense. I think both of these pitchers are likely to pitch much better moving forward than they have. And so, Rogers, I feel like this is one where I think you need a really good start from Rogers, because I do expect Charlie Morton to be a tough matchup, given that he's coming off his best start, that he's starting to show signs of figuring it out. So yeah, you need a good start from Trevor Rogers here. And the Braves lineup does scare me. There isn't really a soft spot in that lineup is the thing that concerns me. Like, Duvall, obviously he goes through stretches where he struggles, and the bottom third, especially Travis DeMeritt, being the 9 hitter, like that's a soft spot. But 1 through 6, 1 through 7, even 1 through 8, there aren't a lot of lineups that have as many guys who worry me. Even though, Albies and Ozuna and, those guys haven't been as good this season, I think they'll figure it out. This is a lineup that I think will still be one of the better ones in baseball in the long term.
Well, in terms of Saturday, we have you on, Chris. It's going to be the season debut of these Sugar King uniforms, the ones that they used a handful of times last year that I think a lot of us agreed were the best possible thing that this team could be wearing.
Yeah.
I know that you in particular are a big fan of these, and I think they're only set up to wear them about 8 total times this year, but we'd like to see them a whole lot more, right?
That's about, I guess because they couldn't necessarily wear this look on the road, it's about 73 times fewer than they should be wearing them. This should be their primary look. I think it would be one of the best looks in baseball of any team. I think it has so much personality, the history of it, being the Cuban minor league team that used to be in the International League. I love everything about it. I've got a from Ebbets Field flannel. I've got a Sugar Kings shirt that's got a little guy whose nickname is Baseballito. Let's bring that dude out. Let's go all the way in. No, I love this look. I absolutely think it would be a coup if the Marlins made this their full-time look. I think they would immediately sell a lot more gear. You saw when they released this for the first time, stuff sold out immediately. So let's bang that drum. Make the Marlins the Sugar Kings full-time.
The thing I'll say, and yeah, I agree with you, Chris, by the way, they should be wearing that uniform a lot more, not just on Legacy Saturdays or whatever. It should be worn a lot more often. It's beautiful. The one thing I'll say about the lineup, the Braves lineup that Daniel brought up, yeah, their averages are way down, but I think they just haven't gotten going yet full time, because one thing they have done a lot is hit a lot of home runs. So I think they're like 6th or 7th in baseball in hitting home runs. They have like 48, 47 home runs. So now you have Acuna back as well. He's already hit 2. My worry about tonight is not that Rogers has been perfect whatsoever, because he has not, is can he limit home runs? Because last year he only allowed 6. This year he's already allowed 3. So you have a team coming in you're going there. They're hitting a ton of home runs. Their averages are down, but they're hitting home runs. This could be a spot that the Braves really get it going. Their whole lineup gets it going. As you mentioned, there's really not a lot of soft spots. So that's what you worry about.
Yeah. The concern is it's going to happen at some point.
You just hope it doesn't happen now. Yeah, you just hope it doesn't happen today or in this series, right? So, but yeah, that's the worry. Is I hope Trevor can at least keep the ball in the ballpark. If you can do that, it's a team that's limited by average, but like Chris just said, he can get it going at any time. So it's an interesting matchup for sure.
And it's a tough thing about this current environment with the dead ball and the humidifier and all the aspects that are playing into offense being down. I know it's been up over the last week or so, but overall offense way down so far this season. The ball's not traveling as far. One thing that's been really hard about analyzing this season and really the last couple of seasons is just that you don't know whether, like, is Adam Duvall's sub 600 OPS, is that just because he's cold? Or is there something about this new environment where Adam Duvall was getting a handful of wall scraper home runs that he can no longer rely on, and that's just going to hollow out his skill set? Like, we've seen that with a handful of players around baseball the last couple of seasons. Kevin Biggio was the high-profile example for the Blue Jays, where he looked like a pretty solid young player, but if you actually looked under the numbers, he had like his average home run distance was like 375 feet or something. He was just barely scraping the wall with all of his home runs, and his value collapsed last season when they introduced this new ball. So it's hard to know. Like, it could just be that this Braves lineup, for whatever reason, Marcell Ozuna, Adam Duvall, Dansby Swanson, maybe these guys are just a little limited in this new offensive environment. But my prior is still that this is a very strong lineup. And so, like I said, you hope they start figuring it out after this series.
And with that, we'll go into our favorite time in this live stream, prediction time. We will be predicting this series between the Marlins and the Braves, and also series MVP. So to start it off, Chris, you are our guest. What is your series prediction and your MVP?
Oh boy, okay. I'm gonna go through pitching matchups first. Tomorrow, Kyle Wright versus Eliezer Hernandez. That's not great, but I think the Marlins have the better pitcher in 2 out of 3. So I'll say they can take 2 out of 3. But I'll go with 2 wins. They'll win the series. Series MVP. I'll go with Trevor Rogers. I think he has a great start tonight. Limits the Braves. I think he builds off his really good start. Changeup and slider both working well for him. I'm going to say he's 7 strong shutout innings tonight.
Yeah, we should have clarified that our series MVP
can't
formula,
be a pitcher?
No, it can be.
Okay.
But it can be because we use win probability added to determine it so that, even relievers, if they're in the right situation, can pick it up.
And either team.
So in the last series, most people picked Jazz, and he had a good one. But if you count it all up, in the last series, my pick, I went really deep.
He knew something. He knew something.
I plucked Eric Gonzalez. I plucked him as my pick, and he got like a really clutch walk, 2-run seeing eye single. And when it was all said and done and the dust settled, that was the difference.
That's pretty impressive.
That's insider trading. You had to know something there.
Just give it up for the rest of the year right now, guys, because I don't think anybody's going to top that one.
Well, I might as well go now and double down on Eric Gonzalez. I am going.
Don't say Eric
Not
again.
starting.
He's not even in the lineup in this.
Is
first
this
game.
He's not in the lineup.
This is a revenge game, I believe. I believe he was a Brave at one point, right?
I don't know.
Am I remembering
He was
that
with the Pirates. For
He's
a
not in
while.
the lineup.
Eli's gonna pick like Dan Castano this series and be right again. Watch.
I'm going to assume that he starts one of the games, probably on the Sunday or whatever, when they give a couple of the real veterans a day off. I will go with him again as my series MVP, even though I have the Braves winning this series 2 out of 3. It's been, I mean, prior to the Nationals, the Marlins had lost, 4 straight series? And I think we need to remember, recalibrate the level of competition they're going up against. So these will be hard-fought games. It's still kind of a vulnerable team. A couple guys still dealing with nagging injuries. Richard Blyer still out with COVID. John Birdie still out with COVID. I think he added all up together, and the Braves are going to eke this one out.
Quick
Noah.
question. It's Memorial Day weekend?
No.
Because they're wearing like camouflage hats.
Isn't Memorial Day weekend next weekend?
I don't know, but they're wearing
I will get
camouflage
that
hats.
for you.
All right.
Yes.
My
30th
series prediction
Memorial.
is that the Marlins will win 2 of 3. I don't think they're going to win the Eliezer start. I think they're going to bookend the series tonight and Sunday. I think Pablo's going to have a really good bounce back. No, not Pablo. That's Sandy. Sandy's going to have a really good game. Pablo's going to bounce back in the Tampa series, but we'll talk about that then. So, and my series MVP, I've got to go with my narratives. He's starting tonight. I'm going with Brian De La Cruz.
All right. Alex.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Mr. Sussman about how I'm not going to agree on Eric Gonzalez, but I'm going to agree on how many they win and lose and say they lose 2 of 3. I think Trevor is good tonight. I also agree with Chris. He's had 2 good starts in a row. Was really good last time out. One run, I think, was on a solo homer. So I think he built. I think he's good. But the Marlins have issues with soft tossers, and here comes Charlie Morton, who tops out in the low 90s. So I think it's a low-scoring game tonight. I think the Marlins lose a close one, probably another 1-run game. They lose tomorrow for sure. Kyle Wright against Eliezer. How lopsided is that? Nothing more to say there. And I think they win the Sandy start. So yeah, one of 3 for Miami. And I'll be completely Mr. Unpopular and make every Marlins fan that's listening to this hate my guts. And I'll go with MVP as Ronald Acuna Jr.
Oh, way.
Oh, okay.
Get out. Please leave. You're no longer allowed in here.
So for my prediction, I have to say that the Marlins are going to take 2 out of 3. I think they win tonight. They lose to Eliezer start. I think you can already put that down as an L for the Marlins, and then they'll take the Sunday game. I have them going 2-1. In my series MVP, I'm going to go Jorge Soler. Coming back, going to DH, doesn't have to worry about any position playing. I think he's going to be really great. Probably I'm going to say a couple of home runs this series. I'll say one against Charlie Morton and one on Sunday against Ian Anderson. But I have him 2-1. Jorge Soler is my MVP. And then that's going to do it for us here on Fish Stripes Live. Make sure to go watch the game. Another quick prediction. Heat in 5, Florida Panthers in 6. That does it for me.
I like the way you
Noah,
think.
Eli, Alex, we want to thank Chris for coming on coming on Fish Stripes Live. We love what you do over there in CBS Sports. We're all fans. Also Isaac, Kevin, and his a glorious golf swing. This is Fish Stripes Live presented by Lube, and always go fish.
Well, I hate to step on Daniel's outro, but I'm going to do something slightly different because we had these predictions recorded on Unfiltered.
Alex already
Yes.
That's all right. But with we recorded the predictions from Kevin, who couldn't be here, Isaac, who's in the press box, and from Kyle Seeloff as well. So we're going to use that as the outro for this episode. It's just to play their predictions from that episode. Check out the full one on our podcast, of course, wherever you get Fish Stripes and on fishstripes.com. Thanks, everyone, for tuning
and on
in.
the YouTube page.
And here we go. Can I click play on this?
There's 2 of you.
Win 2 games. Like, that's what people think I'm crazy, but I say it all the time. When you have this type of rotation, win the game. Take 2 of 3. I understand it's harder than that, but if you are this good, their starting staff is this good, they're going to throw up clunkers once in a while. The expectation going into every series, when you've got 2 or 3 of your best pitchers going, you have to win 2 of 3. When you play bad teams like the Nationals, you got to sweep them. You're not going to do it all year. But what did I come back to? Find a way to be 15-4, 14-5 against those guys at the end of the year. Now, 2 of 3. Now, what is the win probability thing? What am I guessing?
You're picking a series MVP. Any player, presumably on the Marlins, it could be on the Braves, but usually on the Marlins, that you think is going to have a good series, and just most importantly, like come through when it matters most. That's what decides the factor in terms of who actually gets win probability added value.
Jesus Sanchez.
Oh, okay.
All right.
All right. So
Are there any names up for the Braves this weekend? I'm sorry, you mentioned it was Ian Anderson, Kyle Wright. Oh, Kyle Wright's gonna be tough, man. He is very good.
He's been really good.
Charlie Morgan. So no lefties. So yeah, good guess, Kyle. I'll go with you on that one.
All right. So since Isaac and I won't be on the stream, let's go to Isaac for your series prediction and MVP.
Yes, Kyle is gonna be fortunate enough to have me annoying him tomorrow. I'll be at the ballpark covering the first game of the series. I'm gonna go with him. I'm always a little bit optimistic. Obviously, my realistic brain is saying the Marlins are gonna lose 2 out of 3, maybe even get swept. But with Sandy pitching on a Sunday at home, that's his bread and butter. Charlie Morton, Jazz has gotten him a few times, and so I'm gonna go Marlins win 2 out of 3. I think they win. They lose the middle game, and they win 2 out of 3. And I'm gonna go with. I know it's a popular vote, but Jazz Chisholm Jr. He's gone Charlie. And there's 3 righties on the mound: Kyle Wright, Ian Anderson. Both of those guys Miami has faced in the postseason. So I'm going to go with 2 out of 3 for Miami. Jazz Chisholm Jr. is my most valuable player.
Yeah, this is
MVP, best player in the league.
This is definitely a must-win series for the Marlins. They got the edge over the Braves last time in the series. They took 2 out of 3 against them. Played extremely well in Truist Park. It's what it's called now, I hope. And so I think Miami does take 2 out of 3. They win the Trevor start. They win the Sandy start. I just don't see them winning that Eliezer start. In series MVP, I'm going to go Jorge Soler. It's Cuban Heritage Night on Saturday. I think he'll get the juices flowing for him a little bit more.
Why bother with empty shelves at retail stores, waiting 3 days for a break to fill, or driving across town to find out your hobby shop closed at 4 when you always have a card show in your pocket? With Loop, you can instantly buy cards, packs, boxes, or into auctions with the click of a button, and do it all while chatting with some of the best personalities and the best community in the hobby. Download the Loop app now on iOS or Android. Loop, a card show in your pocket.